There are places on Earth that are dangerous, places that are beautiful, places that are ancient, places that are remote enough to feel like they belong to another planet. And then there are places that are worse than all of those, because they don't just scare people, they confuse them. A forest where healthy people suddenly become sick. A valley where animals die for no obvious reason. A desert structure so unnatural looking, it doesn't seem like geology at all. An island so isolated that everything about it feels like reality has been slightly edited. These are not ghost stories, at least not officially. These are real places with real coordinates, real witnesses, real investigations, and just enough unanswered questions to keep scientists, travelers, and conspiracy theorists arguing with each other for decades. Tonight, we're going to some of the most unexplained places on Earth, not because they're mythical, but because they're real, and reality still hasn't finished explaining them. Deep in the Sahara Desert in western Mauritania, there is a formation so strange that from space, it looks artificial. It's called the Richat Structure, though most people know it by a more dramatic name, the Eye of the Sahara. From above, it looks almost impossible. An enormous circular pattern roughly 40 kilometers across, made of concentric rings carved into the desert like the remains of some lost megastructure. Pilots, astronauts, geologists, and internet theorists have all stared at it and arrived at the same first reaction. That cannot be natural. And yet, as far as geology can tell, it is. The problem is that even the explanation doesn't feel satisfying. For a long time, people thought it was an impact crater. That would make sense visually. It looks like something huge hit the Earth there. But there's no convincing evidence of the shock features normally associated with meteor impacts. So the more accepted explanation shifted toward uplift and erosion. Rock pushed upward into a dome, then slowly stripped away over immense time until the rings were exposed. That's plausible, but plausible is not the same as emotionally convincing, because the Richat structure doesn't look like a random geological accident. It looks designed. It looks measured. It looks like the sort of thing ancient people would build if ancient people were gods. And that gap between what we intellectually accept and what our eyes insist on telling us is what makes a place feel unexplained. The Eye of the Sahara is not mysterious because no one has theories. It's mysterious because even the best theory still leaves you staring at it and thinking, this shouldn't be here. And if that's how strange the Earth can look in a dead, dry desert, wait until we go somewhere greener. Somewhere so isolated that even evolution itself seems to have started improvising. If you landed on Socotra without being told it was on Earth, you might reasonably assume you've been dropped onto a movie set about another world. The island sits in the Arabian Sea, south of Yemen, and it's one of the most biologically unusual places on the planet. A huge share of its plant life exists nowhere else. Its most famous symbol, the dragon's blood tree, looks like someone turned an umbrella into a living organism and planted it in stone. But Socotra's mystery isn't just that it looks alien, it's that it isn't supposed to. Islands produce strange life all the time, but Socotra feels extreme even by island standards. The longer you look at its flora, the more it resembles a biological thought experiment. Bottle trees, bizarre branching forms, species that seem to belong to different geological ages. Scientifically, the explanation is isolation. Long-term separation from mainland ecosystems lets species evolve in unusual directions. That part makes sense. What remains unexplained, at least in the emotional sense, is how a place can stay this biologically distinct and still be part of the same planet everyone else is walking around on. Socotra creates a specific kind of unease, not the fear of danger, the fear of unfamiliar logic. You look at a landscape and realize nature has more design languages than the one you grew up with. And once that happens, normal Earth starts to feel like the local version, not the default one. But if Socotra is unexplained because it feels biologically wrong, the next place is more disturbing. Because there, the mystery isn't what you see, it's what happens to living things that stay too long. In Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, in a volcanic landscape already famous for looking hostile, there's a place known as the Valley of Death. That name alone sounds exaggerated, like something invented for tourists. It isn't. The valley became infamous because animals entering it have repeatedly been found dead. Birds, foxes, larger scavengers, sometimes in clusters, as if the place itself had decided to stop allowing life. The leading explanation is volcanic gas. In low-lying terrain, gases like carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide can accumulate in invisible pockets. Animals wander in, inhale a few breaths, and collapse. Then, scavengers arrive to feed on the bodies and suffer the same fate. The valley becomes a chain reaction. Scientifically, that explanation is solid enough, and yet the place still feels unexplained because it violates one of the deepest assumptions humans carry into landscapes, that open air is safe by default. In Kamchatka's Valley of Death, the ground doesn't have to open, the sky doesn't have to darken, and nothing dramatic needs to happen. You can simply walk into a basin that looks quiet and step into air that no longer functions like air. That is one of the most horrifying kinds of unexplained place, not one where the laws of nature are broken, one where the laws are functioning perfectly, and that is what makes it terrifying. And next, we're going somewhere that pushes this same feeling in a different direction, a forest whose mystery isn't just death, but disorientation. Near Cluj-Napoca in Romania lies Hoia Baciu Forest, one of the most famous, haunted forests in the world. Now, haunted locations are easy to dismiss, because once a place gets that label, every snapped twig becomes paranormal content. But Hoia Baciu is interesting for a different reason. The reports are weirdly consistent. People describe intense unease, sudden headaches, nausea, skin irritation, the feeling of being watched. Strange lights have been reported there for decades. Some visitors claim missing time, or the sense that the forest becomes disorienting in a way that exceeds normal bad navigation. Does that prove anything supernatural? No. But it does create a category of place that experts struggle with, a location where subjective experience clusters around the same kinds of disturbance, even when objective evidence stays slippery. There are possible explanations. Infrasound has often been proposed in similar cases, low-frequency sound waves below the threshold of normal hearing that can still affect the body, producing anxiety, discomfort, dizziness, even the sense of a presence. Electromagnetic anomalies have also been floated in public discussions, though that territory gets speculative quickly. Still, Hoia Baciu persists because it sits right on the line between psychology and geography. Is the forest strange? Or does the forest create the conditions that make people feel strange? That distinction matters, because if a place can reliably alter human perception without looking unusual on the surface, then unexplained doesn't mean magical. It means we still don't fully understand how environments interact with the nervous system. And if a forest can make people feel like reality has bent around them, imagine a place where the mystery is much more physical, where entire ships and aircraft became part of a legend so big it swallowed the explanation itself. The Bermuda Triangle is probably the most famous unexplained place on Earth. Stretching between roughly Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, it became world-famous through books, documentaries, and decades of exaggerated retellings about vanished planes and ships. What makes the Bermuda Triangle fascinating isn't that it's the most dangerous place on Earth. It probably isn't. It's that it became a cultural machine for manufacturing mystery. Some incidents in the region were real and tragic. Navigational errors, storms, equipment failure, sudden weather shifts, human mistakes. These are all real hazards in a busy and sometimes volatile part of the Atlantic. But over time, the legend became bigger than the evidence. Cases got merged, details got distorted, and the triangle evolved from a location into a narrative template. If something disappeared there, it was no longer an accident. It was part of the myth. And that, in a way, makes the Bermuda Triangle even more interesting. Because the unexplained element is no longer just the ocean. It's us. It's our appetite for unresolved stories. Our tendency to force separate events into one grand pattern. Our inability to resist the idea that the world still contains zones where reason breaks down. The Bermuda Triangle tells us something uncomfortable. Sometimes the most unexplained places are the ones where reality and storytelling have fused so tightly that people stop caring which one came first. But for our next place, we're leaving behind myth-heavy waters and heading somewhere that is genuinely difficult to explain, even without any supernatural packaging. In Death Valley National Park, on a dry lake bed called Racetrack Playa, there are rocks that seem to move by themselves. For decades, people found stones sitting on the cracked desert floor, with long tracks trailing behind them, as if each one had slid silently across the ground, while no one was watching. No footprints, no animal marks, no obvious downhill roll. Just rocks, and evidence that they had moved. This was one of those mysteries that sounds small until you really think about it. Because rocks are supposed to be the least mysterious objects in the landscape. They sit still. That's their whole thing. Theories emerged over the years. Wind, ice, thin sheets of water, some combination of all three. Eventually, researchers captured the movement process. Under rare conditions, a shallow layer of water forms. Thin ice sheets develop overnight, and when the sun warms them, the floating ice and light wind help push the rocks slowly across the slick mud. So yes, there is now a working explanation. And yet, this still belongs in the video. Because for decades, the place sat in that delicious category between solved enough and emotionally impossible. Even once explained, Racetrack Playa remains one of those locations where reality feels like it's mocking your assumptions. You go there thinking you understand inert matter. Then the desert shows you movement without witnesses, physics without drama, and mystery generated entirely by patience. And for our final place, we're going somewhere that makes people question not geology or biology or folklore, but history itself. Off the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia lies Nan Madol, one of the strangest archaeological sites on Earth. Built on a series of artificial islets in a lagoon, the site consists of massive basalt structures arranged like a drowned stone city. Walls rise from the water. Channels run between the ruins. The whole place feels less like a settlement and more like a ritual machine. And the first question nearly everyone asks is the same. How? The basalt columns used there are enormous. Transporting them would have been difficult enough on land, let alone in a watery environment without what modern people imagine as advanced machinery. That gap between expected technology and visible achievement is exactly what makes places like Nan Madol feel unexplained. Experts do have theories involving labor organization, rafts, leverage, and gradual construction over time. None of that is impossible, but Nan Madol has a unique psychological power because it attacks a modern bias. The assumption that if a society didn't have metal cranes, engines, or concrete mixers, then its architecture must remain within a certain scale. Nan Madol refuses that assumption. It sits in the Pacific like evidence that complexity can emerge in ways we still underestimate. It is not unexplained because archaeology knows nothing. It is unexplained because every explanation still has to fight the visual force of the place itself. You stand there, surrounded by black stone rising from tropical water, and your brain keeps trying to place it in the wrong category. Too ambitious for where it is, too heavy for how it was built, too strange to feel ordinary. And that may be the common thread behind every place in this video. The most unexplained places on Earth are rarely places with no theories at all. They're places where the theories don't fully kill the feeling. The Richat Structure still looks designed. Socotra still looks biologically impossible. Kamchatka's Valley of Death still makes air feel untrustworthy. Hoia Baciu still unsettles people in ways that are hard to reduce to one clean cause. The Bermuda Triangle still shows how mystery can become bigger than evidence. The sailing stones still make physics feel personal. And Nan Madol still stands there like history is daring you to underestimate the past. That's what makes these places powerful. Not that they break reality, that they remind us reality is already much stranger than we like to admit. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Out of all these unexplained places, which one disturbed you the most? And which one would you actually dare to visit?